there's shootings that are happening and people aren't being charged, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like crazy how things like this could be happening in our country when we're supposed to be the law and order country, but we got, I think there was a black lady went to a white lady's door, door was locked, lady felt threatened and she shot the black lady. You got a situation like the movie, what was that movie? Rust.
Mm-hmm.
Where, Alec Baldwin just, shot a person and they died and, no charges. So, I mean, any ideas like about opinions about why this is happening, or what are your thoughts?
I'll start off with just some cases and some precedent that was started. So we go back to Trayvon Martin, right? Stand your ground. That's when you first heard the stand your ground or the castle doctrine. It came pretty much when Zimmerman got off. It kind of gave precedence to that. Like, I have a right, if I fear someone, then, I can kill him because I'm in fear. So some of the cases that recently just happened, you have Kaylin Gillis, 20. She's shot. That was in New York. She was turning around in a stranger's driveway.
Turn around in a parking lot.
In a parking
lot.
lot.
I just did that last night.
Yep.
Yeah,
Ralph Yarl, he was 16. He was shot in Kansas City after ringing the wrong doorbell. That was the older gentleman.
Yeah,
right?
Remember that.
Peyton Washington, 18, and the other young lady, Heather Roth, 21. They accidentally got in a car, right, and then removed themselves, and then they got shot. So people are like, well, why is this happening? And a lot of it's like the castle doctrine or the stand your ground. Mm-hmm. It gives people the right to use deadly force against an intruder, like in their home or in your proximity, right, before retreating. So I don't know if we're just putting fear out there, or now people feel like I can just I could shoot anybody and there's really no consequences, because I think that the case with Trayvon Martin really had a different spin on and the outcome, with this young man going home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said he was in fear. He was scared, So I think people are using that. And I think people genuinely are afraid of certain people for whatever reason.
That falls back to that word I couldn't say last week. Precedent. Precedents.
Yes, you got it. Precedents.
Don't ask me to spell it.
No, we won't.
But that's what it is. Basically, it's coming down to the point in the fact that, all right, Trayvon Martin came out, his guy got off. So now when I go to court, I have something that I can set precedents to. I can go back to that case and I can get off on it. My lawyer's clever enough, he can talk me out of going to jail for it because I was on stand your ground. But, let's get down to brass tacks. It's based on white fear. Why do I call it white fear? Because that's what it is. You can say fear, but there's a term, because we know black fear don't get you out of jail. That's why it's called white fear. Mm-hmm. And white fear, and they got books and they got topics all on it, is basically what's driving a lot of what's going on in this democracy and this government now when it comes to laws being chosen. And stand your ground is one of those laws. I'm sorry. I thought self-defense been around. That's what stand your ground is. If somebody's attacking me to the point where I think my life's in fear, I have the right to use deadly force to save my life or save somebody else's life. I thought that was already around, They change and say stand your ground when it comes to a situation to where it's kind of a gray area. Hey, well, I shot this guy. I really didn't know what he was doing, but now let me use stand your ground because I was in fear, whatever the case may be. But the funny thing is there's a trend, not only with civilians, but also they use this when it comes to law enforcement, to where people are shooting people, asking questions later, and then coming back and saying, oh, I was in fear of my life. I was standing my ground or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But the other person, they ain't got, we see they have no deadly threat. Like, what does turning into somebody's driveway have to do with stand your ground?
That's the castle doctrine. I guess because it's their home.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but
right, like, it's crazy. I was like, how did you use that? But you were in fear.
Like, you couldn't have waited 2 more seconds to see if they're going to pull out and go. Now, you know what I'm saying? So what are you talking about?
Right.
Shooting somebody through the door without answering or whatever the case may be. Crazy. Somebody knocking and asking for instructions or whatever. You ain't got to open the door.
No.
To the people, hey, I'm sorry, or you got the wrong house or whatever. They shoot a 16-year-old boy or whatever, he was a young
16,
boy.
right.
And they shoot him without asking any questions or whatever the case may be. Then they want to say, stand your ground. And a lot of times these are old people. Nobody want what you got, man. What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? So I just don't see the justification of it. But I do see that it come to, when you ask about where did this trend start from, it started from what they call now of white fear, that there's a fear of, I don't know, I have to read a little bit more up on it, but it's basically a fear to the point where I feel like I'm being threatened, you know, so I need my second right amendments so I could have the gun, and I'm going to shoot you now because I'm scared. But I'm sorry, I haven't seen the trend of people going around just threatening people and taking stuff from them. I mean, I've seen crime.
Right.
And of course you should have something with crime, but I haven't seen, like, to the point where we just have this bum rush of people getting their stuff taken and being murdered innocently, or The Purge. They act like The Purge is out, like the movie. You know what I'm saying? Nah, I haven't seen anything like that. So it just doesn't make any sense that there's a lot of senseless deaths going on because people are shooting first and asking questions later.
Definitely agree. They're using now, of course, we have more guns, but we've already talked about that, but nobody wants to listen, but you got more guns. So people be, you know, as far as using self-defense and now using guns as a means. Racial bias, like you were talking about, it's baked into America's attitudes about fear and safety. And that's the truth until we actually really talk about that. We're going to keep seeing that. And statistics on there too. According to CDC, the number of children and teens who died from gunshot wounds based upon this premise rose 50% from 2019 to 2021. It is now the leading cause of death of children and teens. Okay. Black children are 100 times more likely than white children to be victims of the gun assaults. And obviously we know American problem, U.S. accounts for 97% for all child and teen firearm deaths among its peer countries. 97%. So we obviously have a problem that we need to deal with.
Oh yeah, we all know we got a gun problem.
We're afraid of each other. And that's why we try to have these conversations be open, because people are afraid. And your color and my color and, other brown people, you can't be afraid of someone because they look different from you. But that's basically what's happening. They fear, and the fear is real. I'm not going to say it's not real to them, because obviously it is, because I don't know how you just take somebody's life and just not have something going on in your head. You know what I mean? Like, how do you get there? So either their fear really is real, and we need to address, like, what is making you fearful, and try to curb that, educate you on people. You can't be afraid of people just because they look different from you. Why are we posing threats?
And a lot of them situations were senseless. A lot of them situations wasn't a situation where a person their life was, at stake or whatever the case may be. A lot of them, the reason they were newsworthy because their lives weren't at stake. But they still get their day at court, and they still get to go. They still got a chance, and they still have a law, and they have cases that other people got off without going to jail or getting minimal jail time. So it starts to become a point where people are thinking, well, hey, if I shoot this person, I have a chance where I'm not going to go to jail. Or I have a chance where if I do, I'm going to go for a little bit of time. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, once again, it's senseless. And when it comes down to it, it's people just using bad judgment. I don't know one case. It's even like the dude, and let's not take it off of gun violence, that idiot that choked out that guy on the subway station or whatever. He was an ex-Marine or whatever, and he put the dude in a chokehold. Right. And he was saying, well, other people at fear, whatever the case may be. Yeah, the dude was a mental case, had a mental patient or whatever, and had history of that, and probably was having an episode. Like a lot of times when you're in public transportation, you'll see somebody who's got mental issues, and they may be having an episode, but no one was in danger. Right. But this guy decides to put him in a chokehold or whatever case, be an accident or not, the dude passes away. Why did we do that? Based on fear. Once again, a fear that's been created, in a political in a political spectrum. You know what I'm saying? So it's fear has been stoked. You know what I'm saying? Politically, and so now it's a norm for somebody to come out and act on that because they have the political backing of, hey, well, you know what? The world is crazy out there, so I should be able to defend myself.
Exactly.
Come on, I've been living for a long time and riding the bus. I don't know time I ain't got on the bus and seen somebody they didn't have no issues.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's just crazy.
I don't watch the first 48 all the time. Every time it come on, I probably watch it on A&E. Plug for A&E if you want to go ahead and sponsor us. So these dudes are always getting charged with murder, accidental shooting,
Well,
all type of stuff. Like, they get charged manslaughter, something.
well,
We talking about people who didn't even get a manslaughter charge. Like,
No.
They took a life and got nothing. Like, that's what trips me out
Rittenhouse.
when it comes to that point. And I look and I see black people getting charged. I think it was a guy, man, that people get charged like on A&E, like on First 48, for being with the dude that killed somebody.
yeah, they get 25 for that.
Bro, I'm like, okay, you didn't pull the trigger. But in this case, we got a white woman that pulled the trigger.
Got on tape.
Don't even get a charge, a lesser charge. But you gonna charge a dude that was with him.
That's basically what
did
manslaughter
nothing.
is. Manslaughter is shooting somebody by accident. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
But this
So-
dude didn't even shoot nobody. He was just there. You know? And so that's what trips me out about what's happening with that. Is that at least charge them and make them defend themselves in court and get a group of their peers to make a decision on whether or not, even wrong or right decision. At least they got in there and it wasn't just up to you and your cronies at work in the DA's office to say, nah, we're not going to charge this guy or this lady, whatever. That's just my point.
Yeah, I mean, wow, it's funny as we've been doing this show. All our shows are always tied to another show on what we're talking
Right.
about. Either we talking about the same thing over, or we're definitely hitting something here that's pretty important. But that falls into kind of like the 2-tier thing that we were talking about last week. A 2-tier justice system. But like I said, that's just me having a recollection. But yeah, people out here shooting people just on the sake of fear and falling on the stand your ground rule, not understanding why that's a trend, but I can understand that people are out there looking at it and saying, hey, it's people actually getting off on this. So I'm quick. They're quick to pull that trigger. So they're just like making a horrible decision. But why wouldn't they? Because there's no big ramification, and somewhat you become famous for it in a sick way, almost like a serial killer.
Right.
Like shoot somebody, I become kind of famous for it. I have a chance of not having to go to jail for it. We celebrate when they go to jail. Why? Because we don't even expect them to go to jail a lot of times in that situation. So, but how do we solve that? I mean, I don't know. I once again say that kind of falls on what's being pushed politically.
Right.
It's funny that you didn't hear about a lot of this, 16 years ago, because that wasn't being pushed politically. This whole state of fear. It's politicians that run on that aspect. Actually, they come out there with the simple fact that, hey, you know what? These, like they'll say, the big cities are just running amok with crime, and immigrations are coming over and they're raising the crime level, and they come up with this false sense of crime. If you're living in a gated community in some suburb somewhere, you probably don't have that level of crime probably ain't gonna reach you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But, they're still stoking that fear, and that fear that they're stoking leads to people shooting people straight out of fear, shooting first and asking questions later.
Definitely agree. And even here in San Antonio, just a recent case. Again, a guy is trying to pull money at his ATM. 2 people run up on him, and he kills them. And again, it's robbing. Of course, I definitely believe robbing is wrong. But now, these 2, they're not going to jail. They're dead. So now you got to go home at night knowing, okay, yes, you almost were robbed potentially, right? The potential was there, but now you're taking 2 people's lives. I just wonder how that messes with your psyche as well. Like that's it, executioner. No day in jail, no nothing, no court time. You're dead. I was looking at too why police do that, because I always wondered, like, why don't they shoot them in their leg? Why don't they shoot them in their arm? Just stop the threat. But what they're saying in training is, though, you are supposed to stop the threat immediately. So the first thing you do is you do body shots or shoot them in the head to eliminate that threat. And I think that needs to be changed as well. I don't know. Again, I'm not a police officer, but I get trying to stop threats. I know arms and legs are faster to move, but I don't know how I feel about just immediately going for headshots. And taking out the perpetrator, when I get it. I mean, if they're shooting at you, I can understand that part. But a lot of times you're not being shot at, but the first thing you go for is to eliminate your threat, period.
Well, if you're committing a crime, that's one thing. That's the risk of committing a crime. If you're robbing somebody or you do, hey, you know what? You might get shot in that situation. I can't really defend that. Now, I go to the gun range and I shoot. I mean, I'm familiar with shooting weapons. Mm-hmm. Easier said than done. Let me hit somebody in the
right. They
in
said
the
that.
arm
Right. They said
the
it's
leg.
harder too. Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna aim center mass. That's what they call that. Mm. You're gonna aim center mass, and they're trained to aim center mass. I mean, you probably shot in the military. The same thing. They don't train. I mean, I know military. You're trained to kill somebody.
Right.
Now there may be a situation to where you may up close, you may be able to shoot them in the leg or whatever the case may be. But if you stop somebody from somewhere far away and you got a gun and you're looking down the sight, if you have that privilege of looking at a sight and being able to aim and look at somebody's leg, that's one thing. But most likely, this is done in a matter of seconds. You're gonna shoot and you pull up a gun, it's gonna go center mass.
Right.
I think the lesson in that is don't do any crimes.
Or what if you have? I agree,
Basically.
but what about having better training? Because now anybody can get a gun. Like again, I'm not a gun connoisseur. I don't like guns, but I think some people out there are just not trained properly as well. Now everybody. Now you don't have to have a permit. Everybody can just go get a gun. You wouldn't want me with a gun because I've been shot myself. I don't know what I'm doing, and I think there's not enough training in that as well. That's why I'm for just specific people should have guns, in my opinion, because that's their job. That ain't my job to do. And I get wanting some type of self-defense mechanism to protect you. But if the world was just a better place, we wouldn't have to have guns, people. If we could just act right, you wouldn't need a gun. And then we wouldn't have that fear, because what's driving you to get a gun is fear. If you're not, you are afraid of something. You want to protect something. But we should be living in a country where we shouldn't have to have those thoughts in our heads. And that's, to me, where I would like to get to that root cause. Like, what is causing that? Where everybody feels I need a gun to protect myself or to defend myself.
Yeah, we're just living this gun culture. And I wish we had that hunky-dory life that, we were living in hunky-dory. We could sing Kumbaya and eat cotton candy and all that stuff and feel good. But unfortunately, we're in America where it's written in our Constitution you can walk around with a gun. So everybody's got one. That's legally. We ain't even talking illegally what's going on and people getting guns. And you're right, they're not trained. But I don't think there's any training to make it to where you can shoot somebody and not put them in a position to die. Because if you hit them in the right artery in their leg, they're going to die.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But the thing is like, I guess it comes down to, like you said, the grassroots of why we got guns and the whole 9 yards and trying to make a world a better place. And that's basically kind of one of our forums of why we bring it up and try to talk about it here on Left Wing Kingz is how can we make a world a better place, and let's have a common sense conversation about it. Mm-hmm. But, in the real world, unfortunately, we're not finding that medium to do that. Now, the people we're talking about today are the people that have that choice not to do it. We're not talking about policemen that have a split-second decision to make,
right, no.
or even the guy that got robbed by the ATM, and he probably did have stand your ground. He's getting robbed.
Oh yeah,
he probably did fear his life because they might shoot him because they don't want no witnesses. So
right.
I just can't, and shout out to and in both situations that's bad. Shout out to the family of the people who died, because I know he's got family out there, but nonetheless. We're talking about the people that have the choice not to do it, and they're deciding to do it because they think they have stand your ground behind them. Mm-hmm. And that's talked about politically by some politicians that are pushing these fear agendas. They got people going out now shooting first and asking questions later, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I think right now that's maybe a little more focus on like how do you solve that? Well, let's get these politicians out of here that are making everybody scared about everybody. So we can stop these senseless killings. Unfortunately, we can't solve everything. And, it'd be great if the NRA would go somewhere, you know what I'm saying? But the devil ain't going to allow that. So, we're trying to stop, trying to do this. And I think we focus on these politicians that are pushing these fear agendas, unfortunately.
Would you think also the media plays a big, heavy part in that as well? Because when you turn on the news, they ain't showing you news about good things that are going around. They show you news about what the negative things that are happening, the crime that's occurring. And not saying you shouldn't be pointing that information out as well, but I think there's always more negative on TV than there is positive. Looks like there's more bad in the world than there is good.
Yeah, and the news, it doesn't help. But then it's funny when people say that about news. It's kind of their job to tell us what's happening.
Right.
It's not their job to kind of tell us what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And sometimes, and unfortunately in this world, what's happening is horrible. I had the privilege of being on the studio with Kingz 5, while they were filming, and it just gave me a whole different outlook on what they did, just seeing them actually do it. I was back there and I looked and I was like, this is kind of, imagine going to your job every day and just having to get all kinds of information coming in to you that's horrible and having to report on it. Yeah. And that's basically what their job is. And you look at the teleprompters, it's just, and they're reading it, and I'm reading it too. I'm like, damn, that's horrible. Yeah. But they got to read that and say that. You know what I'm saying?
But there's good stuff that goes on too. Like when I think about schools, the first thing they'll do is find a teacher who's sleeping with a kid. Do you know what goes on every day at a school? Most people don't. They don't get to see inside what we do, the hustle. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, but you found that story. You found a story where the kid is, or the teacher is doing some inappropriate relationship. Like find those good things that are going on every day as well. So that's all I'm saying. I just think they should balance it. But I think negativity draws more attention than a positive story about a second grader who learned how to read for the first time. You know what I mean? That now he's reading people
but
just aren't interested in that.
if somebody got shot at this school that's right around from your corner, but they decided to talk about your second grade reading program and not tell you about the person who got shot, wouldn't you be kind of upset with them?
No, I agree. But I'm saying, but on a day-to-day basis, that doesn't happen ever. The first thing they're going to do is, of course, if a shooting happens at your school or inappropriate relationship going on with a teacher, you don't see a lot of positive educational stories, I guess is what I'm saying.
You can see
you don't
the
see
good
that
with the bad,
at all.
Right?
Yeah, like mix it up some.